I bent the rules spectacularly in 2022. So let's see if we'll do that again in 2023. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am wrapping up my progress of the 2022 Buzzwordathon, and I'm going to tell you what I'm potentially going to read for 2023's list. The books that are on for 2023 are probably not going to be the ones that I'm going to end up having read. It is exactly the same story with the 2022 list. I think of the 12 books that I put on the list, I actually only ended up reading 2 of them and fit in other different ones for the prompts. Buzzwordathon is run by Kayla from Books with Lala, and she gives you a list of 12 different prompts, different words, different ideas that you need to find in the titles of some of the books that are on your shelves or that you have bought or that's on your Kindle or in the library, and read them. You can do this as a whole year, 1 book for every month, or you can do it all as like reading a book for the first week of every month, which has got all of these words in the title. I went for the 1 every month, so I've got 12 books that I ended up with that somewhat fit into the prompts. So let's take a look at how 2022 went, and let's look forward to 2023. I started really well because for January, the prompt was the 5 W's and hows. So it was where, what, when, why, who, and how. You had to have one of those in the title of the book. And for this one, not only did I plan to read What Would the Spice Girls Do by Lauren Bravo, but I actually also read What Would the Spice Girls Do by Lauren Bravo. This is a really great introduction to feminism, to the ideas of feminism, brought back into the world of the Spice Girls, one of the biggest phenomenon of the 1990s. Everyone around my age had a favorite Spice Girl, a favorite Spice Girl song. We all went to the big reunion tour about 2 or 3 years ago. So I knew that this was a kind of a great book that I wanted to read. I'd had it on my Kindle for ages, and when I finally actually read it, I had a really great time. There were a couple of things that I didn't love. For example, some of Jerry's ideals are not always in line with my own ideas of feminism, but overall I had a really great time with this one. For February, it was pronouns. So I wanted to read What I Like About Me by Jenna Guillaume, but instead I ended up reading About Us by Sinead Moriarty. And I kind of wish that I didn't, because I didn't really enjoy that book so much. It's the story of 3 couples who have all gone to the same relationship therapist, the same relationship coach, to kind of get over a dead bedroom or a kind of a growing hatred for each other, or feeling trapped in their marriage, or trying to figure out their feelings for other people. There were a couple of things that I didn't love about this book. There were couples that didn't appeal to me. One of the characters was like 30, 35 and in a relationship with a 20, 23-year-old, which really turned me off this book. Overall, I think I gave this one about 3 stars, and I probably would have preferred to have read What I Like About Me, but I think I read this one a little bit earlier in the month and I thought that I had already ticked it off. For March, the buzzword was locations, and I wanted to read and ended up reading Aisling in the City by Sarah Breen and Emer McLysaght. It is to date the final book of the Aisling series, but there is another one coming in 2023-2024 that I'm really looking forward to. In this one, you're following Aisling, who has moved away to New York to become kind of an events advisor or an events coordinator or something like that for a really big firm in New York City. And it does a lot of things about how she is coping with this big move, how she is dealing with the homesickness that comes with living in another country, not having such a big support system around her anymore. Obviously, as an immigrant myself, this is something that really hit home for me. And I think that that was such a big connector for this book with me, that there was no other option that I could give it other than 5 stars. For April, it was size adjectives, and I wanted to read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, but instead I ended up listening to the audiobook of It's Okay I'm Wearing Really Big Knickers by Louise Renison. This is the 2nd book of the Georgia Nicholson diaries, and I had a time with this book. I don't think I had a great time. I don't think I had an awful time. I think maybe I have just grown out of these. I was obsessed with Georgia when I was younger. I feel like I wanted her to be one of my best friends. I wanted to be in the Ace gang. I wanted to hang out with everybody. I'm always going to ship Rosie and Sven together. I'm always going to ship Georgia and Dave the Laugh together. But I think on reflection of these books, they don't age super well. There are a couple of things in this book that are a little bit fat phobic. There's some slut shaming in this book that I wasn't particularly enjoying reading. I don't know if I'm going to continue on with the series. If the option ever strikes me to do so, I might just go into them with a little bit of a pinch of salt and just take them for what they are. and try not to let it ruin the experience that I had when I was younger. For me, it was direction. So up, down, left, right, in, out. I wanted to read The Right Swipe by Alicia Rai, but I actually ended up reading that a lot earlier in the year. Then had to go through my entire TBR, had to go through my Kindle, had to go through NetGalley, and I found Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. This was a kind of a time of the year where I was testing the waters as to how I felt about historical romances, and I don't think I enjoyed this one very much. I don't think that this is the one that I should have used as the starting, because it didn't really speak out to me very much. I can tell you right now, I don't even remember the name of the main character. I know it's not Georgiana. I think it might, though, be Georgie or something along that line. There was another kind of a feminist story in here where she was meeting with a professor of women's studies or women's culture in a university, and she was one of the first people to be taken on board that course. So I did enjoy that aspect of it, but overall the book was a bit of a miss for me. In June, the buzzword was all, and I wanted to read All Adults Here by Emma Straub, but I actually went back and read All American Girl Ready or Not by Meg Cabot. This is the second book of the All American Girl duology. I wanted to read the duology for the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge and managed to tick it off. In All American Girl Ready or Not, you're following Sam and David as their relationship matures and as it develops. They've been together for about a year, and it is a really great description of having sex for the first time as a teenager, the worries that you have when you're considering having sex for the first time, even if it's with a partner that you've been with for such a long time. You get these kind of body hang-ups, you get these insecurities that you didn't think would happen in the first place. And it's also a really great discussion about safe sex, about the protection that you can use, not just condoms, but this is the first time that I ever found out spermicide exists. I really loved these books, and this is a kind of a series that I would love to see what Sam and David are up to now. I often wonder if they're still together, if David ever went into architecture, if Sam is still into art as much as she had always been. I really wish that we could just go back and see where they are 10 years after the end of the book. For July, it was book-related words. I wanted to read Dear Reader by Kathy Rensenbrink, and I did read it in July, but I actually chose something different for my representative here. Instead, I went for The Better Brown Stories by Alan Alberg. I was back at home for a good bit of July. I was back with all of the books from my childhood, and this one just screamed out to me. It was one of my comfort books when I was younger. It was one of my favorite books when I was younger. It's so quirky and wacky and insane at times. And I think I just wanted something quick. I just wanted something that I knew I would be finished within one night. I wanted something that was familiar, and this one was just like wrapping myself up in a comfort blanket while I was reading it. For August, it was items. I intended to read House Swap by Olivia Byrne, and I haven't actually even considered reading that yet. Instead, I read Hang the Moon by Alexandria Bellflower. I think I read the entire of that trilogy this year alone, but Hang the Moon felt really nice for me because it was a really cute relationship between Annie and Brendan. You got to see it develop as they were together for a friend's wedding or so. And I really loved watching their relationship develop, as well as that having been characters in the first book. They were side characters in the first book, I believe. So I really love seeing people that you've known from the first instance coming back together. However, if I ever do again hear the phrase, "You are like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of oral," I think I'm going to have to burn the book down. For September, it was Light or Dark, and I might have changed the book for this one, but I didn't change the author. I intended to read Evening Class by Maeve Binchy because I thought what happens in the evening is that it goes from light to dark in the sky. But then there was a kind of a Maeve Binchy read-along, a reading club, where they were starting with all of the books that she had read and reading them, I don't think in chronological order, but the one that they were going to read for September was Light a Penny Candle. This was Maeve's debut. It was really long. I thought it was a little bit longer than I think it needed to have been. It's about two young girls, Aisling and Elizabeth. Elizabeth is from the UK, Aisling is from Ireland, and I think it's taking place during World War II, the emergency in Ireland. Aisling's family takes in Elizabeth because their two mothers are friends and they have known each other for a very long time. And you kind of go through their lives then. You see them as young 10-year-olds getting to know each other, forming a friendship. And then as they grow up, as they get married, as they have children, as they build their lives together with their partners, and all their family dynamics that come in there as well. I did have a kind of a good time with this one. I think I gave it a kind of a 3.5 to 4-star rating, but I just think it was a little bit too long for me. There were times that I was just kind of not as focused on the book as I would have liked to have been, but it hasn't put me off reading any other Maeve Binchy in the future. For October, it was Creatures, and I intended to read The Call of the Penguin by Hazel Pryor, but instead I went for The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, the Horse, and the Hound, and the Polar Bear, or whatever that book is called, by Charlie Maxey, and it is so beautifully written. It's such a lovely, it really is a comforting book if you are going through a hard time, if you need a little bit of a pick-me-up, even if you're not, and you just want to read something that's going to make you feel really wholesome, really heartfelt, really happy. I genuinely recommend this book. There are times that it can feel a little bit live, laugh, love, in that some of the pages are a little bit kind of dramatic, or some of the quotes that are in there are a little bit too much at times. But overall, this is such a beautifully illustrated book. It is so wonderful, and it's definitely one I'm going to be pushing on people. For November, it was ing words, and I intended to read Walking on Sunshine by Giovanna Fletcher, but actually I went for The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa, because I genuinely think if I hadn't, Bree from Four Paws in a Book would have turned up at my front door and set me on fire. I did really enjoy it though. I had such a great time with this book, and it is making me want to go back and read the first book that she has, The Worst Best Man, I think it's called. This one is about Solange and Dean, who are fake dating each other after Solange has kind of accidentally called off Dean's wedding. Then she realizes it is a marriage convenience, that Dean needs to be married to someone or in a relationship with someone so that he can be put up for a promotion at work. And she decides, okay, well, this is a me problem, so I'm going to try and fix it. I will pretend to be your girlfriend, I will pretend to be your wife, whatever is needed for you to get this. Then, of course, as a fake dating book usually goes, they do start to get a little bit closer as the book continues. There are some really interesting hijinks that happen to the two of them. There is a particular scene, maybe about 60% of this book, that is burned into my brain. And it's so well written. It's got a really great family dynamic as well. The family in this book are Brazilian, so they speak Portuguese with each other. There is such a great community feel about this family, and they are so hilariously funny to read. I have a feeling that if I go back and read The Worst Best Man, I'm going to have just as great of a time. Then on to December. Because it is early December, I haven't actually read the book that I know I'm going to read, but I know I am going to read it. I wanted to read 10 Rules for Faking It by Sophie Sullivan, but I picked it up in February and I kind of DNF'd it almost instantly. Instead, what I'm going to read is You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince by Timothy Jankowski. This is a Christmassy book. It's got a kind of enemies to lovers vibe. It is a male-male romance, and I am so interested to see how this one is done. I know a couple of people who've read it, and I know a couple of people who've enjoyed it, so hopefully I'm also going to be on that same boat. So, 2022, done. 2023, let's go. For January, the words are life and death. So you have to have life or death or anything that has to do with life and death. So life, living, death, dying, anything that you can kind of connect to it. For this one, I am going to go with Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is going to be my first of hers that isn't part of the kind of historical fiction set. So not Evelyn Hugo, not Daisy Jones, not any of those, just one of her kind of a straight contemporary romance books. I think this is a kind of a sliding doors book as to one of the characters is in a car crash, and then you have a kind of a what would have happened if this happened in your life versus what would have happened if this is what happened afterwards. And I'm really, really intrigued to see how this is going to be done. For February, the word is verbs. And this might not be the best idea to read in February because it's not a romance book. And romance is kind of what I do in February, but I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to read Woman Eating by Claire Coda. I got this in Dubray as part of my personal shopper when I was there during the summer. The way that this was explained to me is that this is like a vampire story, but if you take out the vampirism, it just reads like a contemporary book. I can't remember the character's name. I think it's Lydia, and she is living in the UK, and she is a meat-eating vampire, so she does need blood to survive. But it's starting to become less and less common to find that. So she kind of goes on this discovery journey of where she's going to find food, how she's going to find sustenance, and I'm so intrigued to see how this is going to go. For March, the buzzword is secret, and I had to kind of think about this one because I don't know a lot of books off my shelf that have got secret in them, except for one, and that is Jessie and the Awful Secret by Anne M. Martin. It's part of the Babysitters Club books, and I think that you can read these out of order. You could probably go from 1 to 45 to 92 to whatever you want to do. So I don't necessarily have to have read all of the other Babysitters Club books to get into this one. I'm not entirely sure what this awful secret is going to be, but I know that the main character of this book is going to be Jessie, who is one of the younger members of the Babysitters Club. She is the only black member of the Babysitters Club, so I have a feeling that it might have something to do with racism or some kind of a racial issue in this book. But I'm intrigued to see where we're going to go. For April, the buzzword is emotions. So I got two options and I don't know which one I'm going to go for. If I haven't already read one of them, I'll just go for the other one. First one up is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I picked this up a couple of weeks ago off the recommendation of Charr from Thoroughly Enjoyed Books. She told me that this has got great bipolar representation in it. It's one that she would really like to reread herself. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to see how I get on with it. And maybe we can even buddy read it together and let's see how we get on there. If I have already read Sorrow and Bliss by the time April comes around, then I'm going to go for Happy Place by Emily Henry, which is her new romance book coming out in May or June of 2023. I think if I can find a copy of it beforehand, even better. I know a lot of people have a little bit of an issue with Emily Henry's books, mainly that she is not a very heavy romance author, but she is kind of categorized as a romance author. But I have had a great time with any of the books of hers that I've read so far, so hopefully it's going to be another of the same story. For May, the buzzword is flavors, and here's where I'm going to start bending some rules, because what do you do with flavors? You taste them. So I'm going to read Taste by Stanley Tucci. Stanley Tucci is the kind of man that if he turned up at my front door and said, I have fallen in love with you utterly, we need to run away immediately, I would not even stop to pack. We can get what we need on the road. I am obsessed with Stanley Tucci. I have a couple of his cookbooks, but I don't think that this one is a cookbook. I think this is more so a memoir of his life as a food lover, as the son of Italian immigrants, and how much that has impacted his love of food. But it's also going to have some very personal stories, such as the loss of his first wife to cancer, his own diagnosis of cancer maybe 4 or 5 years ago, how he met and fell in love with his second wife, who coincidentally is the sister of his co-star in The Devil Wears Prada, Emily Blunt. I love Stanley Tucci. I am pretty sure I'm going to have a really good time with this one. For June, the buzzword is other. And right now the only book that I have got on my shelf that has other in it is The Other Side of the Story by Marion Keyes, and I'm scared because this is a chunker. I love Marion. I am obsessed with her, but this book intimidates me purely by how big it is. I have a feeling it's probably about 619 already. This one is about Jojo, who is a literary agent and has ended up having an affair with a man in her office, and I feel like it's about all of the impact that that's going to have on her life and how that is going to shape her business and her personal life at the same time. July's buzzword is weather-related words, and I really wish that I had kept Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon because it would have been perfect for this, but I didn't. So instead, I have got Nights of Rain and Stars. I cannot remember the name of the author, but I know that it's a book on my Kindle. And as of now, it is the only book that I own that has anything to do with weather in it. You've got rain in the title. That's obviously a word that's got to do with weather. But if I find something that has wind in it or has sun or has sunshine in it, then I think we're good. For August, the buzzword is body parts. And again, I went through my Kindle because I'm pretty sure none of these have any body parts on them. But I came up with The Sun in Her Eyes, and again, I cannot remember who the author is, but this is, I think, a NetGalley book from a couple of years ago, and it might just help me to clean out some of the cobwebs that are on that shelf. For September, the buzzword is game words, so like bet, win, lose, draw. For this one, I am going to go with The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. She is the author of, I think, Mr. Wrong Number, which I haven't read this year, but I have seen so many people talking about it that I kind of feel like I have to. But I have not really got a whole lot of ideas about this one. I think it is about like a relationship that started out on a dating app, but they've actually met each other before, and there's a lot of hijinks about this. And one of the Goodreads options has said that there's a lot of tacos in this book, and any book that has to do with food, and I'm all over it. For October, it's magic related words. This might not be the best time to do it because it's a Christmas book, but I'm going to try and read Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogle. This is going to be a second chance book for me because I've already read a Sarah Hogle book and I didn't love it. I didn't love You Deserve Each Other, but I'm feeling like this is not going to be a second chance romance, which is probably the biggest reason that I didn't love You Deserve Each Other. So let's see how I get on a little bit better with this one, and let's see what it's like to read a Christmas book when everybody is just discussing spooky season. For November, the word is good, and I am going to read Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. Elle Kennedy has kind of come in under the radar for me. I know a couple of people in the US who have loved her, who have read a lot of her stuff, but I don't feel that she's as common over here or feel like she's as known over here. So let's see how it goes. I'm going to go into it with an open mind. I'm going to go into it and just see how I get along with it. and we'll see where we go from there. I know that this is the first and or second book of a series, so if I'm enjoying it, maybe then it will spur me on to go and read out the others too. Finally, for December, it is sound related words. And for this one, I'm going to go with Frog Music by Emma Donoghue. I've read a couple of Emma's books before. I have read Room and I have read The Pull of the Stars and I've read The Wonder, and I loved all three of those. So I have got pretty high hopes for this one. But I do think that there's a couple of people in the internet that I've seen that have read this one that have kind of similar tastes to me when it comes to her books that didn't particularly love it. I'm going to go in with an open mind. I'm going to see how I feel about it myself. But I am going to have to try and keep that in mind as well too. Those are all of the books that I am hoping or going to try to read for Buzzwordathon in 2023, as well as how my Buzzwordathon went in 2022. If you would like to leave a comment but you cannot think of anything that you would love to say, then just leave me the bee emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.